The City of Southport Board of Aldermen, November 11th, 2021 meeting is called to order. Welcome to all those in attendance, especially our veterans on this Veterans Day, and for those watching online. Our invocation, we're honored to have Army Chaplain and Vietnam veteran Captain Tom Bednarczyk to lead us in our invocation. After our invocation, we will have soloist Debbie Evans sing God Bless America. And it is quite appropriate to have that song on Veterans Day to honor them. But also, God Bless America was written by Irving Berlin for Kate Smith. And it was sung on this day for the first time, 1938, 83 years ago. So we're honored to have that patriotic song. And then after that, we will recite together the Pledge of Allegiance.
For all those in the military, uncover. O Lord, eternal Father and King of heaven and earth, we gather here this evening in humble recognition of your divine providence. We pray for those veterans who have fought, whose spirits and bodies are scarred by war, whose nights are haunted by memories too painful for the light of day. We pray for those who serve us now, especially those in harm's way. Shield them from danger and bring them home. Guide us to a better and clearer understanding of our duties to you, to our country, to our city, and to one another. Awaken in hearts the will to accomplish the ideals for which this nation exists, so that out of our determination and effort henceforward, there may emerge a better world, a world founded upon faith and understanding, a world dedicated to preserving the rights and dignity of man, a world of tolerance and justice, a world intent on loving and serving you. Amen.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
Thank you, Chaplain, and thank you, Debbie Evans, for that beautiful music. Thank you so much for being here and honoring our veterans. Item D on the agenda is public comment. Madam Clerk.
There are two people signed up to speak. The first is Wade Richardson.
Hey, Mr. Richardson, come on up. You can remove your mask, make sure the microphone is on. State your name, your address, and your topic.
Can you hear me? Okay, my name is Wade Richardson. I live in Smithfield Woods, 7008 Robert Ruark Drive, but we also own some property in the city. And Recently, I noticed that the dry storage work at the marina is beginning, and if I have the understanding correct, there's an easement and also a $50,000 donation by the marina towards a kayak launch. So I wanted to ask. I talked to Gordon Hargrove about it, and he mentioned that the project wasn't funded currently. So the request is to ask the city to consider funding that for the next fiscal year for the balance of the project. I think it'd be a great amenity for the city of Southport, and we're surrounded by all this water, so that'd be a great thing to have. And appreciate your time and consideration.
Madam Clerk?
Rebecca Kelly.
Welcome, Ms. Kelly. Just state your name, address, make sure the microphone is on, and your topic.
Hey everybody, my name is Rebecca Kelly, 5971 Dutchman Creek Road here in Southport. And I've got a few things I want to just touch on today. Number one, I wanted to congratulate all of the re-elected and newly elected candidates. Congratulations on earning those votes and earning your positions. Those that are going to be sworn in next month, as well as those that are already sitting on the board. Congratulations. Number two, the county as well as the schools have now gone to mask optional. I was wondering if the city of Southport is going to consider going to mask optional as well at any point in the near future, since we are one of the few places in the state that are still required in our government buildings to have that. The other thing I just wanted to mention is I know that those of us who were running know already, but I do want to make sure that somewhere along the way we can make sure it doesn't happen again. We have citizens who live in an area of the city called Bonnet Way. When these people showed up to vote at the polls, their ballot printed only with the Dozier Hospital Board on it. It did not have any of the municipal candidates listed on their ballot. As soon as I was made aware of this, I called the Board of Elections, and I, as well as one of the other candidates, went door to door in that neighborhood to make sure any of those people who were home knew about that. Unfortunately, we weren't sure who had already voted, either early voting or earlier in the day prior to that. So the folks that we were able to let know were able to print they were able to ask for a provisional ballot to be able to cast their vote, but if they didn't know to do that, they weren't able to do that. I don't know how that happened between the city and the Board of Elections, but I would ask that the city look into that so that no future elections have that issue come up for our citizens. And the last thing I just wanted to mention was, I guess, more of a question. I had a few different voters come up to me concerned that they felt intimidated by some sitting board members going up to them and saying that if I had won the election, they were going to resign their seat. I don't know if they misheard those people or what the situation was in that, but I did just want to mention that and let everyone know that there is a level of decorum that we expect from our elected officials and our sitting board members, and I would expect that all of you who have earned those votes will continue to act in the proper manner going forward. Again, I want to congratulate all of the folks who won this election, and I look forward to working with you throughout the next several years. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Mayor, I believe the city manager has an answer to what happened with Bonnet Way.
Yeah, we all know that answer. We can defer to our city attorney.
Yes, I got a call that morning when that happened, and the Board of Elections had, acknowledged that it was their mistake, that on November the 3rd, 2020, the annexation ordinance and the annexation map was delivered to them. However, that was an election day also, and it just got put up somewhere, and they lost track of it. So, but we had the receipt where it was given to them on November 3rd, 2020.
Madam Clerk,
There's no one else listed, sir.
is there anyone here that would like to speak that did not sign up? Okay. Great, thank you. Next item is the approval of the agenda. You have it in front of you. It's been online. I will entertain a motion. Motion by Mr. Lombardi. Is there a second? Second by Alderman Lowe Davis. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next item is our ethics statement. If any members know of any conflict of interest or the appearance of a conflict of interest concerning matters on the agenda, please so state at this time. Any conflicts? All right, thank you. Item F, approval of the consent agenda. On our consent agenda, we have the minutes from the special community meeting October 12th, 2021. We have the minutes from the regular Board of Aldermen meeting on October 14th. And we also have the extension of the Memorandum of Understanding with Up Your Arts. And this is an extension of the contract that we have with them. We're just extending it to May 30th of 2022 to give them more time in terms of obtaining an architect, which was part of the Memorandum of Understanding previously. So I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Okay. Alderman Davis, second. Okay. Mayor Pro Tem, all in favor? Okay. Motion carried. Thank you. Item G, special recognition, Veterans Day proclamation. It is a special way this evening to honor our veterans by holding our Board of Aldermen meeting on Veterans Day to display the freedom and democracy we have in this country, which they fought for and we all now enjoy. To accept the proclamation on behalf of all veterans, Southport native, Citadel graduate, Vietnam veteran, U.S. Army Colonel Paul Fisher. Please join me at the podium. Thank you. And will all veterans please rise? Whereas the freedoms we enjoy as Americans have been purchased and maintained at a high price throughout our history, and whereas since the establishment of the original 13 states, Americans have been willing to fight and die to preserve their individual rights as guaranteed in the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Whereas we owe a great debt to those who have served in defense of this nation, and whereas throughout the generations their sacrifices have preserved our unique form of government dedicated to human rights and respect for the individual. And whereas for many that sacrifice ended in permanent injury or death, yet their spirit remains in continued preservation of our freedoms and the promise of liberty established as an example for all oppressed persons of the world. And whereas in honor of these dedicated men and women, we pledge continued defense of our nation so that their sacrifice will stand before the entire world as a tribute to the spirit and determination of people dedicated to the principles of freedom and democracy. Now therefore, I, Joseph P. Hatem, Mayor of the City of Southport, do hereby call upon the citizenry of the City of Southport to participate in services and to observe the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month with expressions of gratitude to all veterans known to them, and to further extend this gratitude to the families of deceased veterans, and to solemnly remember the sacrifices of all those who fought so valiantly on the seas, in the air, and on foreign shores to preserve our heritage of freedom. Let us reconsecrate ourselves to the task of promoting and enduring peace, so their efforts shall not have been in vain. Dated 11th of November, 2021. Sir, thank you for your service. Let's go up here. Item H, our agenda. And I guess we're going to have to start planning now to top that ceremony for those veterans. So thank y'all again for being here and the families. I do want to mention before we continue on with our agenda that we have a new reporter, State Port Pilot, Mr. Elliot Duke. I told him not to worry. I've not been mayor 2 years yet, and he's the 4th reporter. So we'll hopefully he'll have a nice long run. So anyway, item 1 on our agenda, there will be a presentation by the Brunswick County Homeless Coalition.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Joe Staten, and I am a volunteer coalition ambassador with the Brunswick County Homeless Coalition. I'm here today. I'm also serving as the board president. I'm here today with board member Paul Whitmer and associate member Jessica Johnson. Thank you very much to the city of Southport for allowing us the opportunity to come and speak. We appreciate it. Today I want to talk briefly about poverty and homelessness in Brunswick County. This breaks down into who we are, what we face, what we do about it, and how people can help. My remarks will be brief. Who we are, the Brunswick County Homeless Coalition, and if you'd like more information about us, if you'll raise your hand, and Mr. Whitmer will bring you a brochure, some more information. No salesman will call. Our beginnings in 2011, a small group attended a social justice lecture at a church in Charlotte and decided to help the homeless, and we've been at it ever since. Our mission is to serve as an advocate for those who are homeless or in need by increasing awareness and educating residents in Brunswick County, and by providing resources for those who are homeless or in need. We have a vision that homelessness in Brunswick County will be brief, rare, and non-recurring. So of course we have a long way to go. What we face. People often ask exactly how many homeless people there are in Brunswick County, and the answer is we don't know, because we can only count the people that we come into contact with. But during the first half of 2021, that's January to June, Brunswick County Homeless Coalition helped 158 clients who were either homeless or at risk for homelessness. There's no dedicated permanent overnight shelter in Brunswick County, so emergency housing is either by motels, which is expensive as it sounds, or in shelters out of county, especially in New Hanover County, which is good and bad. It's good if we can get shelter space, somebody can sleep in a place that's warm and safe, but it's bad to be away from school, work, family support, things like that. What we do to address homelessness and housing crisis. We operate a toll-free 888 information and assistance number staffed by our volunteers to help clients who are homeless or at risk. We intervene both directly with our limited direct aid funds and by referral to other agencies as appropriate. We educate, we advocate, we work to raise awareness through small talks like this and through our annual event each November, which I'll come back to. So what we need, being an all-volunteer organization, volunteers are our lifeblood. We need volunteers. If you or someone you know has a passion for the less fortunate, whatever you do, that's what we want to put you to work doing. Volunteers can answer phone calls, work directly with clients, or they can help behind the scenes with administration, or they can do education and fundraising, things like that. And I'm not asking for donations today, but of course we also need donations. We're not a government program. We depend on private donations to keep going. How specifically can someone help? To volunteer, you can contact a member of the Brunswick County Homeless Coalition, or you can visit our website. That's brunswickhomeless.com. If you'd like to donate, you can donate by check or money order in person or by mail, or there's a donation area on our website. That website again, brunswickhomeless.com. And you can spread the word. The more we help others, the better off everyone is. I said I would come back to our annual event because it is coming up, in fact, this Saturday. In recognition of National Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week, the Brunswick County Homeless Coalition will sponsor a no-contact soup-to-go event on Saturday, November 13th at the Seaside United Methodist Church from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. In addition to homemade soup, bread, and cookies will be provided. The event is to be held outdoors, rain or shine. More information available at brunswickhomeless.com. Thank you very much for having us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for your presentation. Does the board have any questions? Okay, all right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Yes, sir. Thank you. On our agenda is the holiday bonus longevity plan. And this is a favorite item on the agenda each year. It's one of the ways we show our appreciation to our city employees. These funds were included in the budget. And as you see in your packet for full-time, a gross gift, $614.63, which will net $500 after taxes for a full-time employee. And for part-time employee, the gross will be $270.71, which will be a net of $250 after taxes. So So I'll entertain a motion in support of the employee holiday bonus.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Alderman Spencer and a second by Alderman Sharkey. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Item 3 on our agenda is the public hearing on the zoning map amendment for 110 Highland Park Avenue. The owner is requesting a zoning change from R20 to R10. So I declare the public hearing open, and I'll call on Development Services Director, Mr. Thomas Lloyd, to lead the discussion.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as the mayor said, this is a zoning map amendment application for 110 Highland Park. That is tax parcel ID 221MD01011. It is a 14,052 square foot lot, so it's about a third of an acre, roughly. It is currently zoned R20, and they would like to rezone it to R10. Being 14,000 square feet, it is a little bit undersized for the R20 zoning district requirements. The property owner feels like the R10 setbacks are more consistent for a lot this size rather than the R20 due to that reduction in size. They have attached a narrative with their application, so it's here in this packet. But in terms of what can be considered for a rezoning, all uses allowed in the district can be considered. The impacts on neighbors and adjacent properties can be considered. The economic impact can be considered. Tax base increases can be considered. Spot zoning, road capacity, whether there's adequate infrastructure, community opinion, property values, consistency with the CAMA land use plan, as well as the future land use map, the land suitability map, jobs, public services, buffering requirements, and environmental impacts and other site limitations can all be considered. The board cannot consider ethnicity, income, affordable housing, owner versus rental housing, or who the owner is when deciding a zoning map amendment. So, in terms of the process, we're here at the public hearing right now. The board will also have to adopt a statement of consistency and as well as a ordinance or resolution approving or denying the amendment. So in terms of what the future land use map shows, it shows these properties as low density residential. As I said earlier, the lot size is 14,000 square feet. This is 70% of what a typical lot size is for an R20 zone lot. The lot width is also 75% of what an R20 lot would normally be. A zoning designation of R10 would reduce the setback requirements to 25 in the front, 8 on the sides, and 20 in the rear, as opposed to 40 in the front, 12 on the sides, and 25 in the rear. In terms of the uses that are required in an R10 lot as opposed to an R20 lot, the uses are pretty much the same. There's not really any difference. They're both single family housing. So there's nothing, life changing there in terms of what the uses would be. As far as the planning board recommendation, they reviewed this at their September 16th and October 21st meetings. And, some of the concerns were that the rezoning could negatively affect neighbors on adjacent lots. More specifically, just because the dimensional standards in R10 are different than the existing R20 lots on either side that are already developed. Not on either side, but further down, there's actually 2 existing R20 lots that have already been developed. The structures in the R20 lots would be set back much further than the R10 lots, so it wouldn't be uniform with the existing lots in that neighborhood that have already been developed. The future land use map also shows the area as R20, and the committee also indicated that they felt that the rezoning would serve the interests of one landowner and not necessarily further the welfare of the entire community. Based on all of that discussion, the planning board found that it was inconsistent with the land use plan, and they recommended that it not be approved. But you know, as far as this goes, that was their recommendation. The board can now open the public hearing and hear from the public and you know, other parties to see what their thoughts are on this. I'm happy to answer any questions. That's really about all I have on that, though.
Thank you. Is anyone here that would like to speak in public hearing? Please go to the podium and state your name and address and that type of thing. Thank you. Of course, remove your mask.
Hi, y'all. Let me introduce myself. My name is Cindy Wasalisk, and I am currently living in Weaverville, North Carolina, which is in the mountains. My family and I decided we wanted to have a change, a little bit warmer weather, and we started shopping around here for land, and we believed that when we bought this particular lot that it would be big enough to suit the needs of our family, which include myself, my sister, her husband, and our mother, who turns 101 years old in a few weeks. So meeting her needs with the type of house we'd like to build, as our current home is a 3-story home, and the stairs are getting pretty rough for her. So we would like to build in this lot that we've purchased a modern farmhouse style home that is on one level, including a small guest home of 800 square feet. We believed at the time that we were purchasing a lot that would accommodate that, especially since we had it surveyed, and the surveyor assumed, because of the requirements set forth from the city itself of Southport, that included it in the R10 zoning, the surveyor made the assumption. I do have copies for all of you if you're interested in looking at the survey. Mr. Lloyd has said a lot of what I'm going to say, but I also have copies of the city's zoning map itself, where it says very clearly, R10 zoning is 10,000 plus square feet with a minimum width of 75 feet wide, and then it goes to the setbacks of 25, 28, and then we're talking about R10 zoning, which is a minimum, according to Southport City Planning. R20 zoning is a minimum of 20,000 square feet. Our lot is 14,000 square feet. So we really do not meet the requirements of R20 zoning. Furthermore, R20 zoning is supposed to have a minimum of 100 feet wide. We are 76 feet wide. Also, I have copies of that if anybody would like one. I also have, we've gone and spoken to the neighbors, and the people who live on both sides of us, we have their signatures saying that they have absolutely no opposition to our lot being R10 zoned. And I'd like to say that there are other homes on this street that are R10. And the aldermen met, I believe, in October. If you need copies of those signatures, I have them here. I believe, according to some of the documents that I have copies of, the aldermen met in October about the subdivision called the Oaks at Highland Park, which is at the end of our street, literally across from where our lot is. and you approved their subdivision to be R10 instead of R20. So we will be consistent with that. And I would like to say also, the style of home we're building is slightly different regardless of the setback to the street is traditionally the two-story homes, which we will not be building. And we plan on having the design of our home, actually, it's a long piece of property off to the sort of the side in this manner. So really, the setback and uniformity really won't apply to us because either way, it's going to be different than the houses that are currently on the street. We believe our house will be an absolute addition to the street. We plan on building a beautiful home. I have photographs if you're interested in seeing the design of home we'd like to build. So let's see what else I have here. I have copies of all the I'm not sure if I call them addendums or not, but highlighted of what the aldermen had said about the R10 zoning with Oaks at Highland Park, which is the 30-home subdivision, which is currently starting to be built. I have copies of these items highlighted for you. And I think that let me check my notes, but I think that pretty much covers it. I would just like to re-emphasize that the housing complex across the street is R10 zoning. And again, our neighbors do not oppose the zoning that we would like, which is R10. And I realize we're only talking about a few feet here, but for the type of home that we need, 1 story and for a small guest home, which I would be living in. My sister and I have done family homes now for the last 15 years to help care for our mother. So this is really important to us. We won't be able to do that on this land that we've purchased. And I realize the surveyor made an error, and you're not responsible for them making an error, but it was a big blow to us. And I just want to re-emphasize that we absolutely, according to Southport itself, do not meet the requirements for R20 zoning. Does anyone have any questions for me? No? Okay, any questions? Nothing? All right, well, I thank you so much. I'd like to give a shout out to my dad, Maximilian Wozaleski, who was a World War II vet, and he was shot and not killed on Normandy, where the Germans had surrounded him and all the soldiers that had to bravely go on that beach knowing they were going to be slaughtered. And my dad played a huge role in the freedom and independence of Europe and the United States, and I just want to remember him on this day. Thank you, and I was... And now that I've made myself cry, I shall excuse myself. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your presentation. Thank you so much. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Okay. All right, I declare the public hearing closed, and I will entertain a motion from our board.
I'd like to ask questions before we...
Sure. Absolutely.
I have questions for Thomas concerning existing housing that's on that street.
Sure.
So, park, as you enter off of Stewart, there's, I believe, 3 structures that are currently existing, addressed on Highland Park on the same side before you get to this lot that hasn't been built on yet. And those setbacks are what on those existing on the existing houses?
So give me one moment. All right, so you're asking about the ones that are R20 or the ones that are on the western side of the street that are
Yes.
R10?
The west, not the R10, because I'm looking at the side of the street where you have basically split zoning. You have a combination. You have R10 and then you have R20 halfway down the street.
So those ones are set back pretty far back. So the R20 ones, the back or the front setback would have been 40, but they're even set back further than that.
Okay.
So I actually looked at some as-builts from those, and they're way back there. And if you actually drive on that street, you can see that.
Yeah, well, I was there. I
Yeah,
looked at the lot.
they exceed the R20
Okay, so
front
that's
yard
even
setback.
further back than R20.
Mhm.
Okay, I was confused because they were existing houses, but then they sit back far, and they're not required to.
They're not. Well, the R20 ones are not required to be that far back.
Yeah,
no.
well, actually, when I looked them up on GIS, they are zoned R10. According to the Brunswick County, I'm just saying, so that was really why I was confused, and I wanted to just check. They're existing houses either way. It
Well,
doesn't matter.
I think one of them is.
Yeah.
The split zone one is,
They're
but then
existing
the
houses.
other two aren't.
So I was just curious if that was the zone, that with the setbacks in accordance with R20 or not, but it's even more, they're even deeper than.
They're
what's
deeper than
required.
that. I think they're more like 60 feet back from the as-built I looked at.
So I do have a question as far as zoning, because the person who's applied for this change has pointed out a really good point, in that the dimensions of her lot and the other vacant lot adjacent to her, they don't meet the square footage according to the GIS, information for R20, but, we're saying that's how they're zoned. So was there any consideration or talk amongst the planning board to maybe change the future zoning map to update so we're in compliance with what we're saying our minimum square footage is supposed to be with our zoning?
So, I mean, there could be, that could be done, but I mean, at the same time, though, that lot is still buildable. It's not an unbuildable lot. It just doesn't meet exactly what their intentions are. I mean, it's still a pretty large lot, especially by Southport standards. But a future land use amendment could be done if that were what the board wanted.
One last question. Were there any other concerns other than basically the appearance of having one house set back at 25 feet in the front versus 40 feet in the front? Were there any other concerns as far as, anything?
I mean, I think the uniformity was one aspect of it. And also just that, it wasn't really furthering the welfare of the greater community. It was more of a zoning for, one property owner.
You've got a city limit within 100 feet, and you've got two different zones on one street, and you've got a city limit literally within 100 or 200 feet. Why would you have the line for zoning the way that's laid out? I mean, why wouldn't the zoning go to our city limits? I mean, you're literally one or two lots from our zoning being completely filled in the city limits, and you've got these 5 parcels that are in the city limit that have got this change in zoning. How did that work?
So my guess is that it's probably the way the original zoning map was drawn. Back in the day, a lot of times when they were creating these zoning maps, they were using, old tax maps, big plats and surveys. And it may have been something like they were drawing it in on like a color pencil kind of thing. And then over time, this kind of stuff gets, uploaded into GIS, and then you kind of put the shape file over there of what you had. But I mean, you're right, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, that that it's demarcated like that and split zone like that. I would also guess at one point the the city limits line probably had that curvature that the rest of it has there, and that these 3 parcels were probably annexed into the city at some point. It would be my assumption.
Any other questions for Mr. Lloyd? All right, well, I will, the public hearing is closed, and I will certainly entertain a motion or further discussion from the board.
Can I? Go ahead.
So we have a motion to adopt the resolution as written, that we do not change this from R10 to R20. Other way around. R20 to R10, rather, excuse me. Yeah.
I'll second that, and let me also, if I may, make a few comments. I'm sympathetic to your situation, but I don't think that rezoning this to R10 is the solution. And I'd also point out that it's a fairly common occurrence in Southport for lots to be undersized or different sized. My lot I live on is zoned R10, and it's about 5,000 square feet. It's also not unusual for us, for better or for worse, to have some kind of funky zoning lines. For a long time, my house was zoned commercial. We recently did a rezoning of dozens of parcels on the west side of House Street to try to resolve that. And I would certainly be, if the planning board wants to look at it and bring something to us to solve the problem as a whole rather than piecemeal, I'm certainly willing to consider that. But I don't think rezoning this one specific parcel is really in the best interest of the city, unfortunately. Well, I don't know what you mean by that, because they are being followed. Well, again, this community was first platted in 1792, and there was no zoning. And as we've grown and instituted zoning and unified development ordinances and those types of things, we have a very large number of non-conforming lots. No, it wouldn't. No, it wouldn't, because you'd create conflict between neighboring uses. You'd create spot zoning and a lot of other issues. Right, as an entirety. And as I said, I'd be willing, if the planning board wants to come back with something, to go ahead and push R10 up in that area between Holly and Highland Park that is currently R20. I'm happy to consider that, but doing it piecemeal is really not a feasible alternative. Not through an encroachment.
Yeah, that would be called a variance. But I mean, I think this situation would be hard pressed for a variance just because it's not unique to this property. This type of problem is pretty common throughout town in Southport. So I'm not sure a variance would be, attainable in this situation.
If you let the city attorney, he would like to make a comment that will help with your answer. No apology needed.
I mean, if you're denied, you're going to have to build, you're going to have to use the setbacks in the R20, I mean, if you're denied. But I agree with what Alderman Allen was saying. The problem here is you're trying to rezone one lot in the middle of 3 or 4 more, which is probably spot zoning. Now, if you could get the other people maybe to petition, like I believe like John was saying, everything up on the eastern side of that Highland Park up through your lot, where that entire area would be R10, then you do away pretty much with the spot zoning. No, I'm talking about is there a house on either side of your lot?
No, the one lot is vacant, and we were able to find that person, and they signed off on it. They had no opposition. The neighbors to the right of us, to the left, the other right, both agreed.
Well, it would be more legal, I mean, more legally defensible if like all of you lot owners, you 3 or 4 together would petition for R10, then that would do away mostly, I think, don't you, John, with the spot zoning. I just thought you just said they weren't built.
No, I'm saying the people who are there currently, some are R10, some are R20. I'm saying, why would those people,
You really only need, in the way I'm looking at the map, you really only need the 2 lots southwest of you. One of them's, the line goes through the line goes through both of them.
So I was just going to mention, if they have no objection, I mean, you would think that, you said that both people on either side of you had no objection. If that were the case, you would think they wouldn't have a problem proceeding with that if we did do that.
Well, the planning board could initiate that if they wanted to. I mean, if the planning board could initiate that.
Mr. Mayor?
Thomas?
I'd like to make a
Was there
comment.
any doubt that it was an R20 when it was purchased?
I can't speak for the folks who purchased the property. I can tell you that I had no doubt that it was R20. I think the issue was the surveyor's error, but I had no doubt, but I can't speak for whoever sold it or purchased the property.
Hey, we can't keep this up. I have a comment pending. Thank you. I'm sympathetic to your situation. However, I don't know if you are aware, we have 14 pages of documents which is the reason I imagine that you didn't get a lot of questions when you made your presentation. But the compelling part about this is there is a reason that we have a planning board. They study in detail all of the issues, and they are looking at the integrity of the whole zoning for the whole community. They are looking at impact on neighbors, And one of the things that by law we are not allowed to do is spot zone for the benefit of and convenience of one property owner. And the city attorney has laid out for you, and so has the city planner, the process that you can now follow. And I hope that you will, but continuing to argue with us is not going to be productive. We haven't voted yet.
Not voted.
But
We
I would
haven't
like to
voted
say
yet.
one other thing. This board appointed the planning board, and the planning board advises us on the details that we frankly are not adequately equipped to and have the expertise to study. And so I think that it is very unwise for the Board of Aldermen to go against a strong recommendation from the planning board. I believe that we are done with back and forth.
I have comments to make before the vote, though. My comment is we recently had a similar situation in which we had an individual that wanted to build a single-family house on something that was zoned multifamily. And we identified that that was a problem because it was not appropriate. And we took the time and we allowed that person to pursue a rezoning to the appropriate zoning classification of R10 or R20, but we also looked at those other properties in that same street area, which is North Caswell. I would rather we encourage the planner to reach out to the property owners on either side of this applicant to see if they'd be willing to rezone to R10, and then we would be in compliance so that she is in full recognition of her responsibility to get zoned appropriately for what she wants to do with the property. It's all residential. It's not like we're changing use groups. And then also, if those property owners are agreeable and are seriously agreeable, then they would actually sign and commit to whatever they have to do with the planner to have their zoning changed also. I mean, the vacant property is R20 like yours, but I'm pretty sure there's at least one other R10 in that row of housing, if not two of them, which doesn't make any sense because why did we mix that? It is a very odd situation to mix those up when the lots are basically all the same size. You know, you got, you know, 0.33, 0.33, 0.32, and 0.37. Why do we have different zoning, R10 and R20? Why is it mixed up like that if they're all the same dimensions?
Thank you for that discussion. So, if you would like to repeat your motion. You made a motion.
I move that we adopt the resolution and deny the application.
And we had a second from Mr. Allen, is that correct? Okay. And is there any, we've had discussion, is there any further discussion before we vote? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So we have 4-2. Okay. Yeah. Ma'am, if you would get together with our planner, there's a way to move forward. It's just not zoning that one property that you own. So you should be able to move forward with the adjacent lots beside you and that type thing and move forward in that way. Yes, go through the planning board. Yes. Yes, go through the planning board. And if it's more of a group or a neighborhood as opposed to one lot, that was the problem with the issue today, this evening. So you have to talk to the planner about that. Yes, ma'am. I appreciate that comment. And if you will talk to Thomas Lloyd, he will be able to help you with that. So
We'll talk about the fee. Yeah.
Thank you. Next is item 4, public hearing on the rezoning of Southport Crossing out parcel. This is off 133 Extension across from Lowe's Foods. It's they're requesting 10 acres of this 54-acre tract to be rezoned highway commercial. So I'll call on Mr. Lloyd again, our city planner, to lead the discussion. And I declare that the public hearing is open.
All right, so this is out there at Southport Crossings, as the mayor said. They are looking to rezone a section of that tract. The tract is 54.08 acres, and this is a tract that was reserved for future development as part of that that commercial development, as well as the planned unit development for some residential product there in the back. As far as what they are trying to do there, they are trying to continue the commercial development that is already existing there, to have some additional out parcels, and they would like to rezone it to highway commercial. And if you look at figure 1 in your packets, it shows what the current zoning is. There's also a diagram later on in the packet on page, 43, that shows the area that they're looking to rezone. There is some existing highway commercial that's in that section. So they would, to the east, there's commercial light density, and then, to the south, there is the existing highway commercial zoning. The future land use map does show this area as planned unit development. The applicant feels like this rezoning is a natural fit for highway commercial, though, because it is directly adjacent to the 133 extension, and it's also directly adjacent to all of these other commercial properties in the current commercial node. As far as the planning board review, the planning board reviewed this at the September and October meetings. They discussed whether the uses permitted in highway commercial would be appropriate in this area. No one saw any issues with any of the uses because they're already consistent with the uses that are allowed directly adjacent in the existing highway commercial district, as well as Brunswick County's commercial light density district. And they're all uses that would be reasonable around existing commercial nodes and shopping centers, such as the Southport Crossing Shopping Center. They also discussed some of the natural features of the land. There is area in between what the applicant would like to rezone and the planned unit development area that would kind of act as a buffer between the two. They also talked about infrastructure and whether it was adequate for highway commercial type of uses. The infrastructure is adequate. There is excess stormwater capacity on site, and they also have water and sewer from Brunswick County at that site. And it's also right there at that intersection that'll be getting upgraded here shortly with the 211 project, the widening project. They discussed the future land use plan, and it does show the majority of this tract as medium density residential. But the future land use plan does also have a policy that states that commercial development should be placed at the intersections of major thoroughfares, and this fits both of those because it is right there at 211 and 133. And it also mentions that these nodes are not meant to be static, but that as these lands are developed, larger nodes and possibly shifts in the location may be necessary and warranted. So this would be an example of that existing commercial node shifting and enlarging in that area. It was the consensus of the planning board to provide a positive recommendation for this zoning map amendment, and they found that it was consistent with the land use plan. Due to the existing commercial development and existing commercial zoning at that intersection, I don't see any issues with the approval of the proposed zoning map amendment either. There is existing infrastructure, the uses are suitable and are, they're compliant with what the adjacent uses are, they're compatible with them, and I don't think that this amendment would lessen the enjoyment or the use of adjacent properties. So happy to answer any questions if anyone on the board or anyone from the public has any. And I believe the developer has a representative here as well, Mike Nichols, if he would like to speak.
Would anyone like to speak at the public hearing? Please come up. And then we'll have questions for Mr. Lloyd also from the board.
In the meantime, for the sake of the public that don't have the maps and diagrams that we do, this is the shopping center area where the new Lowe's grocery store is, and Falcone's and Chuck Ice Cream and so forth. And it's, there you go, okay. I was just dropping brand names.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. Mike Nichols, Paramount Engineering, 122 Cinnamon Drive, Wilmington, North Carolina. I'm here tonight representing the developer, or the shopping center owner. The exhibit that was being discussed there briefly, if I could step away from here, I'll try to talk loud. This is the shopping center today where Lowe's Foods is, and there's several out parcels here that have recently developed. I believe there's been a car wash, AutoZone, or look at that, beautiful, thank you so much. Recently approved but not yet built were a Mexican restaurant and a chicken restaurant, alpaca chicken. So this is the area where you come in off the stoplight now, that curved road that would be immediately to your right-hand side. It's just grass right now. It's been somewhat cleared already and been leveled out. It is, however, zoned as part of the PUD. Very little of it is zoned HC. Our intent is to get the 10 acres that is outlined in this little piece here to be rezoned as HC, so that the shopping center owner who already has one anchor tenant very, very interested in developing here to provide that terminus or the end of the shopping center. So as you're looking down the line right now, it's just blank, and now it would be an anchor tenant, and then the residential PUD part of it would be separated by wetlands and could go behind it. So it would act as almost like a finishing point for this development or this shopping center. No wetlands would be impacted. We'll obviously have to come back for a subdivision map and have to come back with the different site plan reviews and everything else. This is sort of step one in getting them in a position to be able to secure that tenant. And we would appreciate your support. Mr. Lloyd mentioned that the infrastructure is all there. It's almost, I mean, this has been stubbed out and ready to go. It's just now they're ready to go, and everything's in place. And we appreciate any support you can give us and any questions you may have.
Questions? Anyone else that would like to speak? No questions from the board? We declare the public hearing closed, and you have in your packet a consistency statement and also a ordinance approving a zoning map amendment rezoning, and just for the public, I'll read just a few lines of it. The city has enacted a Unified Development Ordinance and a zoning map that control land development within both the city's incorporated areas and its ETJ. Whereas in order to promote the public health, safety, and general welfare, and to promote the best interests of the city and community, it is necessary for the Board of Aldermen from time to time to consider appropriate revisions, modifications, and addition to the city's zoning map. The Planning Board has thoroughly reviewed this matter and consistent with the City of Southport CAMA Core Land Use Plan. So with that discussion and from the previous discussions, I will entertain a motion whether or not you want to change this zoning from PUD to highway commercial.
Make a motion. Make the motion that we adopt the statement of consistency that supports the rezoning and also the ordinance that would approve the zoning map change from 10 acres of PUD to highway commercial.
By Alderman Sharkey. Is there a second? Second by Alderman Lombardi. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next will be item 5, be a public hearing on the text amendment, the tree preservation. This is a review of the city's tree protection and landscaping regulations over the past several months. There were some deficiencies in the tree preservation regulations that needed to be addressed to better promote how we preserve our trees in the future. Southport has a tradition of being a part of Tree City USA, celebrating Arbor Day. And if you'll note, our Forestry Committee is profiled in the November issue of the city newsletter. So this is a very important text amendment. Again, I'll call on Development Services Director Thomas Lloyd, and I declare the public hearing open.
All right, so thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the mayor said, the planning board did a review of our tree preservation and landscaping regulations over the past several months. I'll go through some of the high points. The ordinance was reformatted just so it would be, easier to read. So you'll see a lot of stuff that's in strike through in the attachment there. But a lot of that was just rearranged to be in different sections. Just in terms of some of the high points of some of the changes, the permit name has been changed from tree removal to tree impact permit, and a permit would still be required for removal or damage to any protected tree for development activities within the critical root zone. The requirement for tree removal zones and tree safe zones are also instituted in there to be shown on the tree plan for non-residential development, multifamily, major subdivisions, and plan unit developments. 80% of these lots that are to be subdivided are to be left untouched prior to lot development. Prior to the infrastructure being placed in, they will then, get a tree permit lot by lot rather than, clear cut the lots. That's the intention behind that requirement, is that the tree removal zones would be where the infrastructure is going in, and that would be that part of their tree plan. And then the tree safe zones would be the trees that are going to be kept on the property prior to the individual lot development happening. There are also canopy tree retention requirements per lot based on their lot size in R10, R20, multifamily, and plan unit development. The mitigation requirements have also been updated, where regulated or specimen trees are removed. The replanting requirement shall consist of a minimum of 25% live oaks and an overall minimum of 50% canopy trees. Understory trees cannot exceed 50% of the required plantings. A mitigation plan that contains between 10 and 50 understory trees has to have a minimum of 3 different species, and a mitigation plan that contains over 50 has to have a minimum of 4 different understory trees with balanced representation. There's also a requirement for mitigation trees to be planted within a year of a tree permit being issued. And then there's also some modifications to our lot clearing and preparation enforcement procedures. If a property is located within a residential district, then they would be subject to a civil penalty in the amount of $1 for each square foot of the total size of the lot. And they also must plant 2 canopy trees per 10,000 square feet or fraction thereof. So for that one, you know, if somebody just goes out and clear cuts a 10,000 square foot lot, they would be subject to a $10,000 civil penalty there. So we're really trying to encourage folks to get that tree permit like they are supposed to, and to not do lot clearing prior to that happening. Then for non-residential or commercial, the offender would also be subject to a civil penalty in the amount of $2 for each square foot of the total size of the lot. And they would also need to plant 4 replacement canopy trees per 10,000 square feet. So other than that, there was also some language regarding tree protection in the critical root zone. So for this, in the event that a developer is unable to fully protect the critical root zone, which, I mean, some of these trees that we have, you know, the critical root zone goes on multiple properties, multiple lots. You can't always fully protect it, especially, you know, when you're talking about, you know, 2 times, 3 times the drip line of a really large tree. That's pretty significant. So in those cases, the developer must have a landscape architect or ISA certified arborist prepare guidelines on how to protect that critical root zone to the maximum extent possible during the development process. We have also added some definitions to Article 8. So the first one is protected trees, which is defined as regulated or specimen trees as defined in the ordinance. There's also tree removal zones, which I mentioned earlier, and that is defined as the area designated on a preliminary plat, a minor or major subdivision, a plan unit development for road, site drainage, and utility rights-of-way, plus the area not protected by building setback requirements. So these would be the, you know, the infrastructure areas that would need to have trees removed during the site development process after the preliminary plat is approved. There's also tree safe zones, and that's what I mentioned earlier, which would make up the individual lots on those subdivisions that are to be left untouched prior to the individual tree permit once the lot, you know, gets a building permit pulled on it. So those zones would constitute at least 80% of each individual lot as planned. There was also a change in the definition of lot clearing, and it means any activity which removes part or all of the vegetation and or trees, including but not limited to root mat removal and or topsoil removal. Some vegetation and or trees may remain on a lot that has been cleared. So other than that, the planning board reviewed this at their October 21st regular meeting. After some discussion, it was the consensus of the planning board to recommend that this text amendment be approved, and they found that it was reasonable and in the public interest. They also adopted the attached consistency statement that you have in your packet. So now it's time to hear from the public like we did on the last 2. The Board of Aldermen may consider this text amendment if they're comfortable with all the public input and with the language as it's written, and a consistency statement must be adopted, and there must also be a motion to approve or deny the text amendment. So that's all I have. I'm happy to answer questions from the aldermen or from the public.
Is there anyone that'd like to speak at the public hearing? Please. Go up to the, yeah.
What was the live oak requirement for the, is that only for commercial lots or is that also for residential?
You mean in terms of planting back the specimen
Yes.
tree? So anytime a specimen tree is taken out, in terms of the mitigation requirement, 25% of that would need to be a live oak.
Even if it wasn't 25% live oak taken out to begin with?
Well, it's if a specimen tree is removed. So if a tree over 30 inches is removed, 25% of that 30 inches would need to be planted as a live oak.
Okay, but only if it's a live oak taken out or any specimen tree?
It's a live oak specimen tree.
Okay, so just live oaks for live oaks. Thank you, that was my confusion.
Anyone else? Madam Clerk, you had a letter?
Sir, I have a letter from Scott Lynn, Chairman of the Southport Forestry Committee. I would like to take this opportunity to express my support for these most recent updates to the tree protection ordinance that was initially passed in 2018. When this article was originally crafted by the Forestry Committee, we knew that it was not perfect, but instead hoped that it was a perfect start. As with all the articles within the UDO, it was meant to be a living document that could be updated or changed to reflect current challenges and realities. These most recent updates proposed by the Planning Board close some of the gaps in our initial document, bring clarity and specificity with regard to mitigation and clear cutting in particular, as well as emphasizing the importance of our urban canopy to Southport's unique character. Over the last several years, the pace of development has accelerated throughout the city and has brought unrelenting pressure on one of Southport's most valuable assets, our signature live oak trees and entire urban forest. A comprehensive tree preservation article within the UDO is not intended to stop or hinder responsible development, but provides a roadmap for residents and developers that both protects these valuable assets in the short term and ensures the regeneration of the forest through mitigation when disturbance does occur. These recommendations for updates by the Planning Board are another step forward in ensuring Southport remains the special place we all call home for generations to come. Finally, I would like to applaud the Planning Board for their continued efforts to keep the tree preservation article up to date and viable. Likewise, credit is due to the city staff and the Board of Aldermen for both their support of the article and also its enforcement. Any guideline or regulation that is only as good as the enforcement and adherence to its tenets day to day. The city's initial adoption of the article in 2018, followed by the second proposed update, indicates that Southport's leaders and citizens recognize that we all have a responsibility and role to play in protecting our unique and special heritage for future generations. Therefore, I respectfully request that the Aldermen adopt this updated tree preservation article and commit to its enforcement. Respectfully, Scott A. Lynn.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak concerning how we preserve our trees and protect these live oak?
I have a question for Thomas. Thomas, was there supposed to be a definition for critical root zone in this version? Because I didn't find it, and I looked in the UDO, and I didn't see it in there either.
I believe there is. Give me one moment. Let me get my UDO.
Public, that it's sort of a delightful definition. It's the circle on the ground corresponding to the drip line of the tree. So you think of the tree and the branches and the water coming down. So it's sort of the circumference.
It's in here, Laura.
Critical root zone, describing that?
The critical root zone, it's on page 8-8, in the UDO, it says,
Okay.
critical root zone, a minimum area surrounding a tree that is considered essential to the to support the viability of the tree and is equal to the radius of 1 1/2 foot per inch of the trunk diameter at breast height. That's already
I
existing.
just wasn't able to find it, so that's already existing, so that doesn't need to be added. That's good.
Yeah.
I'm reluctant to pass this tonight. I would rather we table it for the new board because you're changing fines in this document, which they would not have a chance to say whether they agree or disagree. But I'm also curious, I understand how you can apply this rather, maybe clearly with an undeveloped lot. But if you apply it to somebody who has an existing household with trees and everything on it, like myself, and there's the requirement for mitigation. Say I have a tree that's between my yard and my neighbor, and I'm on a 7,840 square foot lot. We have 2 trees. They're both 51-inch diameter trees because they were there before my house got built. Okay, so there's good-sized trees, but they become diseased and they need to be taken down. I'm reading through the mitigation, and it says that I need to replace it in accordance with, the requirements of 25%. I'm not sure where you'd really put 4 trees of 3-inch diameter on my lot that are going to grow to this size. And I really wonder if you can do that with anybody's lot that's smaller. Think about the size of some of these trees, these specimen trees. How can you really meet the terms of mitigation? Do we have an example that somebody's worked this out and said, well, we could really replace trees on a lot that's only 0.09 acres, and meet the requirements?
I think, Thomas, you might want to speak to this, but what occurs to me is that again would be a non-conforming situation because you can't write the ordinance for every size of every lot, is what I would say. And so if it was something that was unrealistic, I'm sure they would come to Thomas and say, I can't do this and this is why, and then work through it from that perspective is what I would guess. Thomas, is that?
Yeah, I mean, we would need to figure out some sort of alternative. We haven't had that situation come up just yet, but I mean, I do see what Laura's saying, especially regarding some of our smaller lots in town. But I mean, if there was like a 50-inch tree in the middle of the lot, we would have a little bit of a hard time mitigating that in certain cases if it were a small lot.
So if it was diseased or if it was hit by lightning, would you really force them to put it back? Is that part of it, regardless of the?
I mean, I don't think that's fair.
Yeah,
in the
that
case
doesn't
that it's diseased or dead.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of ridiculous. So I don't think we would in that case. No.
I'm just, like I said, I read the policy like I'm supposed to. I go through it. It said, notwithstanding the above, any tree removed requiring mitigation shall be mitigated through the planting of these things. And you have to get a tree impact permit if your tree got hit by lightning, or if it's diseased, or it's a threat to your primary structure, things like that. So I'm just trying to follow this ordinance that has been written and making sure that I would be in compliance. And I'm just now asking, though, is it a realistic mitigation plan for some of our existing structure with small lots, or should this be taken a little more time again before you vote on something and then you say, well, now we can't actually apply it? How many exceptions are you going to have?
It seems to me, first of all, I know that Thomas, the Forestry Committee, and the Planning Board spent a lot of time on this. And as Thomas has said, you can't address every single possible iteration of how this would play out. The UDO is a living document. It can be amended we can fix the problems, but in this case, I don't think that we should let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Okay. Before the board continues their discussion, is there anyone else that would like to speak in the public hearing part? If not, we'll go ahead and I'll declare the public hearing closed.
And I was just going to mention something else. If it's the board's pleasure, we could try to clarify the language there that, you know, if the protected tree is dead, severely diseased, or a danger, you know, we could not require mitigation for that. I feel like that would be pretty reasonable to clarify that. So I was just going to point that out, if it's the board's pleasure.
Yeah. And Mr. Oliver, did you want to speak in the public hearing part? Okay. All right, there we go.
This is really a question for Thomas. Thomas, what's the canopy spread on a full-size live oak in Southport? About 50 to 75 feet? So it goes along with what Alderman Sharkey was talking about. There's a number of places where this would just not work. I've planted a number of live oak on my property. I'm a big supporter of the whole live oak thing. But there's a tree that I think needs to come down that is near my driveway and my house. If I put a tree in its place that's going to take up a 75-foot radius, it would be growing through my bedroom window. So somehow we need to put a caveat, a specific caveat into this that allows Thomas, whoever we're going to delegate this to. The wording right now does not give Thomas that authority. Now, we all are trying to use reasonableness in this, and I'm just suggesting that there's another sentence that needs to be put in there that gives the city the authority to make provisions where it's common sense. We can't write it for every lot, I understand that, but we haven't given him the authority to do that in the current legislation that's proposed now. So that's my statement. Thank you.
Anyone else that would like to speak in the public hearing part? Okay. Okay, we'll close the public hearing and continue the board discussion. Any further comment from the board? Any further discussion?
I do. Can't we approve this and with the intention of putting another sentence in there that explains this, that Thomas does have the authority to change if it's a special situation? Can't we still approve this?
Well, I mean, you can approve it, but if you're going to come back and add something to it later, you're going to have to, you know, do it as an amendment.
No, approve it now with the addition.
Well, I think you'd want to be very careful on exactly how you word it. I don't think that's something you're going to come up with in 1 minute here tonight. If you want to add that and make it clear, I don't think you want to try to add a sentence or two to it right now. I mean, I would have a hard time coming up with exactly the language without talking with maybe some of the committee and Thomas on exactly what kind of exception you're trying to make.
But we can, if we passed it tonight, we could go back and add that sentence if we wanted to.
Sure, you can amend the ordinance anytime you want. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. You can amend the ordinance anytime you want to.
Would we have to go through a public hearing and everything if we add that sentence?
Yes, sir. If you didn't add it tonight, it would be an amendment to your ordinance. But it would only be a public hearing on the addition of that sentence or whatever it is. Okay.
Do you have any comments?
I appreciate that conversation, Alderman Sharkey. I appreciate all that conversation. What I would like to say is that if we go ahead and approve it tonight, we're strategically better off when subdivisions or we get anything submitted to us, and with the understanding that it isn't perfect and we need to come back and do that next month. I believe we can advertise it. Thomas, could that be prepared for the next meeting? So we could have it for January. So that's why I would be favored. Also, just as far as the fines go, it really was a clarification of the old fine, that it's not really new fines. If you look at how those fines were calculated before, it was $5,000 for the first 5,000 square feet and another 5,000 for any portion over that per 5,000. So that in and of itself isn't really new. We were asked, the city manager asked for a clarification of that, so it made it simpler. And so that's really not a change. And you know, all the other changes in here have been born out of things that have happened in the planning process. We were fortunate to have the developer at the Eason property that's going to put the car wash in. Citizens, or some of them are here now, came to the planning board meeting when they were talking, and the developer was presenting, and they expressed their concerns about the huge live oak that everyone's aware of that's in the middle of all that property. Fortunately, it is on the property line. The oak actually, it was subdivided, so it's on the property line. So they're able to somewhat mitigate the impacts for that. And excuse me, he was willing to hire an arborist to come in and work with the critical root zone and design a plan to mitigate it as much as is possible and still execute his development on the land. So to codify that is really important. And I have a whole list of most of these changes, in fact, all of them came from situations, the development on Burrington, the reason to ask for a landscape architect or arborist, a landscape architect to do the tree plan is before it said engineer, landscape architect, or surveyor. The engineer that did a plan for that Burrington project has 200 trees around it that are the same understory tree, and there wasn't a way in the ordinance to have it be something different, and so that's where that language was born out of it. I would advocate that we go ahead and with Alderman Sharkey's comments to move forward in addition to, but to go ahead and adopt it. I would also say that there are a couple little typo type things that are corrections that need to be made that I spoke with Mike, and we can make sure we put these in tonight.
All well aware that there's galloping building and development going on right now, and the necessity to address this with a new and stronger tree preservation amendment is so necessary, and we're going to be overtaken by events if we don't act.
Thank you. Excellent discussion. Any further comments from the board? Mr. Allen.
Yeah, Thomas, I have a couple of questions. In, I guess, section F, tree plan, section 3, what is that? What is section 3 referring to? Single lots that are not in a subdivision or in a major subdivision plan? Is that what?
Yeah, it's retention requirements.
Okay, for individual lots.
For individual, yeah.
And then, okay, that's fine. Then 3A, tree retention requirements per lot size under R10, R20 MF PUD.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand that. What do you mean per lot size under?
Well, it's just it's different square footages, how many trees you would have to keep on that lot for the different sizes.
So we're using the word under. Also, we could substitute the word in?
Yes.
Perhaps might be clear, and I don't. Okay. 'Cause under, to me, in that context, is a little odd, just because it makes me think we're talking about undersized lots, as our previous discussion pulled
I'd
out.
recommend the word classified as R10, R20, or whatever.
Yeah, or in the R10, R20 MF PUD zoning districts, to me would be eminently clearer, rather than under. If I could request that minor change.
Any further questions or any further discussion?
Thank you.
No, thank you, Alderman Allen.
I make a motion that we adopt this text amendment update with 5 clarifications. D.2, where it said protected tree, I think you just left out the word regulated, and protected specimen tree, protected tree. So adding regulated and specimen in before, I think that was just an omission. And then E1, where you reference the state statute, it's actually dash 19.22, not 19.3. That's E1. Yep. Wait a minute. D.
There's a definition of protected trees that's being added
I know,
also.
I know, but the way it read, a critical root zone of any protected tree located within any setback, and for a protected tree located anywhere on said lot. Okay, you don't feel like you need those other references, then that's fine. Well, it would say of any regulated tree located within any setback, but I guess you're right, because it could be regulated or specimen.
I think it'd be better if it's specimen tree.
Okay, so right, so protected. Okay, so protected tree located within any setback, and protected specimen tree. Is that how you're? Okay, if you with that correction, and then the state statute was that 1922, and then H1, replace must be removed with may be removed, because must remove, they may, while they get permission, they must not remove it, they may remove it. So that's H1, and replace must with may. And then John's conversation with 3A. In the R10, R20, MF, and PUD zoning districts, which was 3A.
And I think the word size needs to be removed as well.
Okay. Per lot in the
Per lot in the R10, R20, MF PUD zoning districts.
Whatever you put in it, I'm gonna vote no.
Okay. Okay. And can I also say within the motion to adopt the consistency statement that demonstrates this text amendment is consistent with the city's vision and core values as stated in the Core land use plan?
So we have a motion to accept the consistency statement as well as the text amendment with those reviewed changes. Is there a second? Second by Alderman Lowe Davis. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? Passes 4-2. Thank you.
I would like to also ask the planning board, Thomas, if you would take back to the planning board the conversation about one, giving you discretion, and two, discuss replacement of dead, dying, diseased trees.
All right, thank you. Item 6, a public hearing text amendment on outdoor displays in highway commercial. It's a request to amend the zoning requirement concerning outdoor displays and whether these appurtenances, I appreciate that word, Mr. Lloyd, need to be removed at the close of operating hours. So I declare the public hearing open, and I call on Mr. Thomas Lloyd once again to lead the discussion.
I can't take credit for that. That was how it was defined. I wish I knew words that were that big. Anyways, so this is a text amendment to 3.6J accessory use standards, and it's in reference to outdoor displays. And outdoor displays are defined as the placement of products or materials and associated appurtenances for sale or rent outside the entrance of a retail establishment. Currently, this is a permitted accessory use if the use standards are met. So the use standards require outdoor displays to be incidental to the principal permitted use. According to that first use standard for outdoor display, only the principal use shall sell merchandise within that area. So whoever, you would only be able to sell stuff that's associated with the principal use. So some random person, wouldn't be able to come sell stuff in front of a shop that's not, affiliated with that shop. The second use standard requires that merchandise or equipment be located where it does not interfere with safety issues. So just some examples of this are access, parking, aisles, fire lanes, alarms, hydrants, standpipes, or any other type of fire protection equipment. The third use standard currently mentions that outdoor displays shall be removed at the close of the operating hours of the establishment and shall not be permitted to remain overnight. So this proposed text amendment has been submitted by Paramount Engineering, and what they are requesting the board, is to amend the third use standard by adding language that would allow outdoor display areas to remain overnight in areas that are zoned highway commercial.
Is there anyone that would like to speak in the public hearing? Please.
Good evening again, Mike Nichols, Paramount Engineering. We ran across this when we were working on the previous project that I was up here for, and the shopping center developer is working with a client who has, it's an outdoor lifestyle kind of agricultural retailer, and they have outdoor display. They sell things like barbecue grills and lawnmowers and trailers and nursery supplies and all the things that you would, be very infeasible to bring in every night, so to speak. And they have shops all over the United States, and they leave them outside. So when researching this for that developer, I noticed that this was not allowed in the HC zone. So not to make it self-serving for this one developer, because I know we need to look at a broader picture when it comes to these things, I brought this example. So the red is the HC zone. It's all, in the outskirts of town. It's not downtown. It's not affecting the urban core or the quaint downtown village area. But you do have some existing HC zoning uses which have outdoor displays, and they leave them out at night. Lowe's Foods has an outdoor display, Walmart, Ace Hardware, So we're just looking to clean it up so that those uses which currently are doing that will not be in violation, bless you, in the ordinance, and also allow the developer to get a contract with this client, because they don't want to take the risk of being in trouble if they, if it's not the thing, it's the city, hey, everybody does it, don't worry about it kind of deal. Well, we kind of want to make sure it's legit. So that's the reason for the request. And I appreciate your concern, and if we have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Can we get a COVID test for you?
For me? COVID test? Oh, over here.
No one wears a mask more than I do, and I've developed a slight allergy to them, so I feel fine otherwise. So, but thank you for your concern.
That wasn't me, all right.
Any other questions or any other comments in public hearing? Okay, we'll close public hearing. And any questions or comments from the board?
This is in line with highway commercial use, and I have no problem with amending the text, amending the UDO to allow for it.
All right, anyone else? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the text amendment and adopt the consistency statement.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Mosteller. Is there a second? Second by Alderman Lombardi. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Committee reports. Alderman Allen.
None, thank you.
Okay. Alderman Spencer.
People are still drinking. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Alderman Sharkey.
Do not.
Alderman Davis.
Forestry Committee. We've heard some of the work from the Forestry Committee at length tonight. I want to thank the board for approving this. And just a quick anecdote. At the monthly meeting, which was Tuesday, we had at that meeting 2 surprise visitors, a couple who live on Oak Island. They just recently bought their house in the Yopon area, which is the area with all the wonderful live oaks. And the reason they showed up at our meeting was to find out what the Forestry Committee was, to try to find out what the tree protection ordinance was. They were very interested in what we were going to do possibly with the new text amendment. And what had gotten them so interested was about a week ago, I think, they woke up one morning to the sound of saws, and they went out, and the vacant lot next to them, which had, and I used past tense, had 3 huge live oaks, was being clear cut. Those 3 live oaks were coming down. And the neighbors, I mean, this couple and other neighbors, went up to the tree cutting company and said, why are you doing this? And the answer was the owner doesn't want these trees. And they weren't even in the middle of the lot. They were around in what would have been the setback area, but they wanted it completely clear cut. And I don't know the particulars, but in Oak Island, that would result in something to the equivalent to a slap on the wrist, about a $500 fine. And they were desperate to find out what they could do to try to prevent this from happening in the future. And so I'm really proud that this board and Southport values its trees to the extent that we do. The tree committee works very, very hard on things like this. And you mentioned that the newsletter every month has this is the city's newsletter, has an article from the Forestry Committee about things of interest. Coming up in December, Christmas trees. Is it a good idea environmentally? to buy a living tree in a pot and then go put it out in your yard? Maybe, or maybe not. Please read.
Barty?
Yeah, Beautification Committee again. Well, we didn't meet this past Saturday for cleanup because of the rain forecast. But yesterday we checked the lights on the large tree that goes at the Whittler's Bench and all the sailboat wreaths, as we do each year at this time. We also inventoried all Christmas decorations used throughout the city and replaced what was needed. A special thanks to Ken Guyman, who was able to repair 4 of the wreaths we thought unusable. For your information, Ken is the person who built all the Adirondack chairs throughout the city and has led the efforts of replacing and adding picnic tables in various places. So we're getting ready for Christmas, and it's coming faster than we can handle. Thank you.
The Parks and Recreation Committee wants to recognize that the city has received confirmation of FEMA's approval to repair the Kingsley Park Pier. The Parks and Recs director will be working on getting the Kingsley Park Pier reopened, hopefully by spring. Basketball registration for both boys and girls is continuing till the end of November. For ages 5 to 17, please sign up at the Parks and Recreations Department office beside the gym, 8:30 to 5:30, Monday through Friday. And then, get ready, the holiday season is almost here. Santa's helpers at the Parks and Recreation Department have been making plans. First, it's Supper with Santa's Elves. Wednesday, December 8th, starting at 5 p.m. till 7, parents and kids up to ages 12 are invited. It's $5 per child. Santa's Elves are cooking up a pizza party with crafts, cookie making, and a Christmas movie on December 8th at 5 o'clock at the Parks and Recs office there beside the gym. Then mark your calendars for December 9th. The Christmas Classic, the Polar Express, will be showing on the Garrison lawn starting at dusk. Popcorn and hot cocoa will be provided. Bring your chairs and a blanket for the young and the young at heart. But wait, there's more. For children's ages toddler to 12 years, on Saturday, December 11th at 10 a.m., plan to attend Santa's Elves Workshop. Santa's Elves will help the kids make Christmas crafts, and weather permitting, there will be a Christmas hayride around town. Again, that's Saturday, December 11th at 10 o'clock in the morning at the Parks and Recs Department there by the gym. Santa's Elves will be waiting. And as a reminder, regarding the upcoming streetlight demonstration, I just wanted to remind everybody that it will be coming forth. The demonstration will be an opportunity for citizens to evaluate the same fixtures with varying color temperatures for input to help finalize the streetlight policy selections. The manufacturer has given a delivery date of the middle of November for the demo fixtures, so as soon as the lights are installed, the city will put out notifications. Once the demonstration is active, we'll schedule the public workshop. Again, in the meantime, citizens may reach out to Alderman Davis, Alderman Sharkey, or myself with any questions or concerns regarding streetlight policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have just a few items this evening. I wanted to touch briefly on financial condition of the city. We're 4 months into the fiscal year. We should be looking at most departments having about 67% of their budgets remaining. So if we're right where we need to be at this point in the year, so we're in good shape. I would also like to touch base real quickly on the Yacht Basin Pedestrian Corridor project. We will be meeting next week with Wes McLeod with the Cape Fear Council of Governments to take a holistic view of that entire area. I think after the workshop it was determined that we need to kind of slow that process down and maybe see some different alternatives by a professional in this particular field. I would also like to make everyone aware that Indigo Phase 2 project has been submitted to the city. It includes an annexation request, a zoning amendment request, and a PUD site plan. Staff currently has it. We will keep this approximately 60 days to review. We can ask for an additional 30 days if we need that time. So that process, that development has started into the pipeline, so to speak. Let's see, let's touch base on House Street. Right now, I want to let everyone know that what you see on House Street is not the final product. We are required by DOT to let that road settle for 6 months before we do a final pave. We are about 2.5, 3 months into that, so I wouldn't look for anything earlier than March of next year. I want to put on all the elected officials, the newly elected officials, I want you to be thinking about sometime in January for a board retreat. I've spoke with Mayor Hayden about it, and we're probably going to try to do a couple of half days to kind of stretch it out a little bit. We've got a lot of important topics to talk about, and so we will discuss those a little bit later date. And I believe that is about all I have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hargrove. Up next is mayor's comments. Southport had a 50% voter participation, and I want to thank all who voted in this recent election. I want to recognize our fire department and Chief Drew and Police Chief Todd Coring for their response to a house fire on Clarendon Avenue on Saturday morning. There was no loss of life or injuries, and surrounding structures were not involved. So thank you to those men and women in those departments. The city tree lighting will be November 26th, Friday after Thanksgiving at 6 p.m. at the Whittler's Bench. As you know, last year it was virtual, so we can all gather together down there on that Friday at 6 p.m. I want to wish everyone the blessings of Thanksgiving. And I want to quote from the proclamation issued on October 3rd, 1863 by President Abraham Lincoln. I do therefore invite my fellow citizens in every part of the United States, and also those who are at sea and those who are sojourning in foreign lands, to set apart and observe the last Thursday of November next as a day of thanksgiving and praise. Thank you. Staff reports are in your agenda packet, and now we will have board comments. Mr. Allen?
Thank you, Mayor. I just real briefly like to also give my deep thanks to our veterans and all that they've done. My father was a World War II veteran, and I appreciate the sacrifice of everybody who has done their duty to enable all of us to be here free tonight. Also, the mayor mentioned the devastating fire on Clarendon Avenue. If anyone wants to assist that individual, there's an entity called Southport Cares, which is the police and fire department. Help people that are in emergency situations like that, and you can, I believe, the website is southportcares.org, and you can go there and actually make a contribution. It's an extremely worthwhile entity, and I'd encourage everybody to do that and support the individual devastated by that fire. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Spencer.
Yes, sir. Thank you. This will be the last full meeting for me, and so I wanted to say that it's been an honor to sit here and at these final statements during our meetings. A lot of the times I've tried to honor the people that have gone on, and so my last one in a full meeting will be regretfully Miss Sharon Aldridge, who we lost, also known as Doodle, who was a city employee and a world traveler. Went more places than I could dream of. I think Disneyland 60 times, so I think that's a record. But our thoughts are with Lee Aldridge and Scott and Randy, and another great citizen lost. And other than that, y'all have heard enough of my babbling over the years. I appreciate it, and I'm gonna leave now to go to a church meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Spencer, and thank you for those remarks. Alderman Sharkey.
Yes, just my opportunity here to pass on information that I was able to gather when I was doing door-to-door during the campaign season. As you guys convene in January and forward, please take note that the citizens are looking for a plan. They're looking for a long-range plan that's going to address the roads and the water lines and the other elements of infrastructure, because that's of prime importance to them. They want a plan that lays out how it'll get fixed, how it'll be financed, and when it's going to happen. The other thing that people are interested in is the sidewalk on Howe Street and how can that be completed. And also, is there a future for a new gymnasium, a fitness center in Southport? Southport has the only enclosed basketball courts in the county that are open to the public, and the building we have right now really isn't got much more life in it. So I know the citizens would appreciate it if there's a way to have in a plan how to replace that building and how that would be funded too, and how that would be, done. All these things also need to be well communicated. One piece of information I got was that we do not communicate well as far as what's going on weekly, where we're going, how we're getting there. If there's emergency situations like road closures, detours, COVID rules change, things like that, we're not communicating as effectively as we should. And we have different ways of doing it, whether it's through Facebook or Southport Connect or the newsletter. And I just think we need to look to do a better job in the future so that you're actually serving the citizens. Thank you to Chris. Thank you to Thomas. Thank you to Melanie and Tom. Thank you to Randy and Lisa, Elena, Dory, and Kate that's hiding back there. Ralph, who greets us at the door every meeting. Todd, who keeps an eye over us and makes sure that we're safe and somebody doesn't run in and do something crazy to us all. Thank you all for your help. Heather, I'm sorry. I see you peeking. Thank you all for your help and assistance over the last 4 years. I really appreciate you guys. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Alderman Davis.
Thank you. I was very happy to see all the veterans here tonight. I am from a long line of veterans. My great-grandfather was in the Spanish-American War. Both of my grandfathers fought in World War I in Europe. My father and all my uncles were in World War II. My late husband was a Marine and fought in Korea. And my son has recently retired from the Army and is currently an Army contractor in Antarctica, where apparently he will fight penguins. I don't know. But the point is, that I'm hoping to make, is that they fought for what happens right here and what happened tonight. This was democracy in action, and that's what it's all about. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank them for their service. Mr. Lombardi.
Yeah, I really feel that this comment I'm about to make can affect the future of this city. The Public Works Department has been trying to hire workers since our approval of additional personnel without success. The main reason for this is the low wage offered by the city. There are fast food restaurants offering more per hour than we do. I think it is time for us to revisit our pay structure to attract not only public service personnel, but all employees of Southport that are worthy of a better wage. Southport is embarking on many improvements needed to maintain our city, and more qualified people are needed to implement these changes. I ask our city managers to confirm this and report back to the board with some sort of a solution. Thank you.
Excellent comments, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Mosteller.
Thank you. I was going to talk a little bit about the tree ordinance. You know, when I Googled what are the characteristics of a good neighborhood, this came up. The first thing on the list is a good neighborhood has lots of trees. So when we recognize how important our trees are to our historic character and the fragile environment that surrounds us, when we recognize that our collective canopy trees help protect our community during hurricanes, when we recognize how important the trees are to our quality of life, we can understand that the trees in Southport are community assets. And this is why we need a strong tree protection ordinance. So I had a lot more, but I'm going to dispense. I'll save y'all. Now for something fun. Start this holiday season with the first of many fun Winterfest events. Winterfest 2021 will kick off with a Southport favorite, Pet Pictures with Santa. Pet Pictures with Santa is sponsored by the City of Southport Animal Protection Department, and it will take place on Sunday, December 5th from 2 to 4 at the Indian Trail Meeting Hall at Keziah Park at 113 West Moore Street. Bring your pets for a jolly picture with Santa. Enjoy some pet-friendly activities and treats while you wait. Donations will be accepted. And this is just the beginning of Southport's holiday celebration. Please go to the city website events calendar for a list of all the wonderful Southport Community Winterfest events. Y'all have a good Thanksgiving.
This was an excellent meeting, wonderful tribute to our veterans. So happy to see them. Thank you all for being here, those who watched at home. We have work that has been accomplished and work to be done, and we will continue to rededicate ourselves to that. We will be at our workshop, as the city manager mentioned, we held in January. We'll be addressing some of these issues, and thank you, Mr. Lombardi, for mentioning we do need to restructure our pay scale. So we will be looking at that, and we will be looking at how we plan and move forward, Alderman Sharkey. So thank you for those comments and the comments you found on the campaign trail. So again, wishing everyone a happy Thanksgiving, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Okay, second. All right. All in favor? Motion carried. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.